welcome you guys to 2056 Ways to Inspire Conference. This is our Learning Commons. I hope you've had a good day so far. This is our last session in the afternoon. I'd like to introduce Shahroze and VanDuzer from 1114. Sorry, 1114. And formerly 1241, who'll be talking about strategy more than meets the eye.
Okay, so I'm Shahroze. You can call me Shazzy, that's way easier. So I just graduated from McMaster this year with a mechatronics degree. I'm working at a manufacturing shop called Dieform, which is actually run by a 23 alumni on 1241. So I was previously on 1241. I scouted and did pits when I was a student for the 2 years. Then for 3 years, I actually did strategy. In the past 2 years, I was coach for 1241. And now I will be on 2056 this coming season.
Not 1114.
No.
Okay, my name is VanDuzer. I've been on the team since grade 9. My family used to be on the team as well, so I grew up with first in my life, unfortunately at the same time. It involves everything in my house, but it's fun. Recently, I attend Ryerson University for media production. So no, I'm not an engineer, but I get teased by him every single day for that. And I'm on 2056. I'm their strategist, and when I was a student, I was their drive team, pit crew. I scouted. I did chairmans for the 4 years. Yeah, awesome. So just to give you a brief overview of what this presentation will be generally about is Shaz and I will be talking about strategy. And this is a very beginner's kind of course of how we think teams should develop their strategy. Hopefully we put a lot of examples that are very relevant. We try to keep it to the last 3 years for all of the examples. I think the latest we go back is like 2017. So hopefully most of you understand the game so you can understand the concepts a little bit better. Yeah, hopefully that this presentation does not put you to sleep like it did last year for me. So moving on to the agenda.
Yeah, so what we're going to be talking about is recommended tools, things you'll need to do strategy. From there, I got the match schedule now which is pretty much pre-match planning. What to do if your robot moves. That's basically the first 30 seconds approximately of the match of what you should be doing as an alliance. And then this wasn't in the strategy. That's basically coming up with contingency plans for your coach that if things go wrong, this is what you should be doing. From there on, we'll be talking about how to be annoying effectively, which is how to play defense. Yes, there's a good way to play defense. It's a final countdown, it's endgame, and the different variations of endgame that you can do with your alliance. Spot the difference will be briefly covering quals versus elim strategy. And then let's not kill the coach is how you should be reviewing as a team after a match has ended.
Okay, so let's begin. So the first one is recommended tools. This is kind of a joke kind of list, but at the same time, I do think that it has some stuff to say about it. So the first is strategy boards. So I provide some examples of 2056's strategy boards. Generally, on OP, we like to keep them nice and clean, and then only kind of color code like the side, like the specific sides. So then when we put on the whiteboard marker, it's very easy to see exactly what is going on, and there's no like random colors that's like clashing and everything like that. The next one is obviously writing tools, taking notes during qualification matches, anything you can get. As a strategist, you need to write down, you need to remember, because you will come across teams that are like, I have no idea who this team is, or a team that has like 5 or like 4 different teams that have like basically the same numbers. It gets very confusing. Recording cameras. So on OP, we have a close-up camera that you probably see our main mentor Hunter in like the little media box, and he actually just films our robot. We use this to kind of look upon if defense is going well, or auto is going well, if auto is cooperating of what we programmed it to do. But we also use the close-up camera to look if our driver Tom is playing around with the defense like we talked about, if there's anything we can improve on, anything like that. As well, OP has a big iPad at the top of the stands, and this is more for the strategist and drive coach, so we can get a general view of what we're seeing, so it's easier to communicate it to the coach. Because of course, when you're down there, it's very hard to see what other teams are doing with such complicated views and everything like that. Next is comfortable shoes. You will be doing a lot of walking, a lot of running. Like at Worlds this year, I was just going up and down those stairs like 50,000 times. It's probably why like my calves are so jacked. That's an inside joke on my team. Yeah. And then the last one is definitely patience. So Shazzy has a lot of patience. I do not. That's why there's no pictures of me. But so it involves a lot of patience because cooperating with a lot of strong personalities is hard. It's really hard. Planning strategies, communicating it to your coach in frustrating moments. I get it. We've all been there.
Okay, so I got the match schedule now. This is basically the pre-planning that goes in for a match as a strategist. So typically a strategist could be your coach, or there's a separate strategist that communicates the strategy to your coach. Regardless, either way, this is what the strategist should be covering. So let's start off with the complete basics, that understanding the different roles that can be on an alliance. The first one is an offensive role, which is basically the scoring robots on your alliance. And then there's the defensive role, which is basically a robot that's trying to prevent the other alliance from scoring or trying to reduce their score as much as possible. So what you really have to do is figure out what your alliance can do, what they can do efficiently and consistently, and figure out what the opponents can do, and then based on that, formulate your strategy around that. So that'll basically be the whole presentation today, about formulating your strategy around these two different roles.
Okay, so right now we have our first example. For every single example, you will see the definition on the left side, and then we will just play it. So this one is looking at the individual team score produced versus the amount of cycles prevented. So this match was OP's match against 11-14 at IRI. We did end up losing this one, but I really want to highlight how using Jack in the Bot in this match, we use them as defense, even though they are known for having these incredible quick cycles, but they do have a cap. They can only score in the lower position. So, and our third robot, we didn't know much about them. We didn't really trust their defense because we didn't know. And we're against Simcoe, who is obviously a really good team. So it made sense to switch Jack in the Bot off for D to actually make an impact on Simcoe during this match.
Underway here at IRI. Everybody moving during the sandstorm period. They've all crossed the half line, so points all the way around. The sandstorm abates.
Okay, so in this match, the strategy was for Jack in the Bot, who is this guy right here that's zooming past, to fill up their side of the hatch panels and their side of the rocket panels and balls that are lower down that they can reach, and then to go play defense on Simcoe. So they're
panels in
just
place in that
finishing
rear rocket ship for
up.
red. One, and here comes a second one.
So they're just finishing up right now their last hatch,
Red rocket ship they
putting it
do.
on the front on their side because
Meanwhile,
OP
over
put
on the
one
blue
on the other
side,
side
we've
at
got
auto, and now they are starting to go play defense on
4
Simcoe
hatch
right
panels
here.
in place on their rear rocket ship. 2 on the front one. Early advantage now to the
During this match, our
Blue
third
Alliance with
robot
about
is
80
like
seconds to
putting
go, about a
cargo
12
ship
point
around,
lead.
or cargo balls around here
Now
into
down
the
to 10.
cargo ship. It was a right choice to put Jack in the Bot
Additional
on
hatch
Simcoe
panels
because
being
they are
put in
preventing
place on that
Simcoe
rear
from getting
red
their
rocket ship,
normal
all 6
cycles
of
of
them now
16 15, 16, and I
Now
think
the
we
Red
reduced
Alliance
them
gonna
down
focus on the
to
cargo balls. They tried
like
one, but it fell
5,
to the ground. Beach
6-ish.
spots, go back, get another one.
At the end of the match, it was a close match,
Beach
but we
spots
did
up
lose
and putting one in
because we
at
were
the
relying on at
highest
least
level
a couple cycles of our
for
third
that rear
robot
rocket ship for red.
during this. But
Meanwhile,
without Jack in the
inside
Bot,
they've got
this is a
four,
really good example
now
of
5 hatch panels in place
using
and
Jack in the
4
Bot as a
cargo
defense
balls.
robot, even though they were initially an
2
offensive
balls.
robot.
Okay, so the next part will be basically choosing who you should be playing defense on. So typically, if you think about who you should be placing your defense on is, oh, I'm gonna look at the top team on the other alliance and I'm gonna put the defense on them to reduce their score. But that's not necessarily how you should be thinking about playing defense. You should be looking at the other alliance and thinking, if I put my defensive robot on them, how do I bring the net score of that alliance down to the lowest possible? So that might not be putting defense on their best robot, it's putting defense on the robot that can't get around defense as well. Because let's say there was a team like 2056, right, who was really good around getting D last year, even though they were probably be putting up more game pieces than other teams, you put defense on the other team because they're probably less likely to get around the defense. So I'll show you an example over here, which was at IRI. So as you can see, 1241 is actually playing defense around the cargo ship right here, and we're targeting 319. So the alliance on the other side was 2168 and 319. 2168 actually put up 2 cycles more undefended typically than 319, but 2168 put up 4 cycles more than
Rocket
319
for the Red
under
Alliance.
defense.
Meanwhile,
So what we
Celtics
actually did is we started
even
playing
up
defense on
against the
319
Peak
because
Squad
as you
has
can
been
see, they
able
really
to
struggle
place
to get around the
multiple
defense.
cargo into
So,
it, rock into the cargo
Although it
ship
might have made sense
for the
initially, let's play
Alliance.
defense on
We have a minute
2168
and a half
and
left in this
prevent
match,
them from getting
and each
their
alliance
usual
is
2 more
neck
game pieces
in
than 319.
neck.
Now what we did is
30,
we reduced 319 by 4
Big
game
Bad
pieces
Bob
rather than
is up
reducing
against defense
2168 by
from
2 game
Theory
pieces.
6. They're trying to get to the cargo ship to place a piece of cargo, but Theory 6 is not letting them place it easily. Meanwhile, 2168 is building a...
Okay.
2, 1, go!
Okay, moving on to the next point. What to do if your robot moves. So, autonomous is, I think it's like probably one of the most underestimated parts of where strategy can go wrong at the very beginning of the match. Especially, we saw this especially in 2018, where Otto was literally probably the decision maker, if not the 30 seconds, and then if not, we will be talking about the 80-second rule. That's later to come. But you should choose your auto that is flexible with your alliance's capabilities rather than gaining the max score points. We definitely learned this year with Simcoe, for example. At DCMP, so this year, OP and Simcoe could basically fill up the whole cargo ship at the end of auto. This turned out to be a good thing for points-wise because it gained us 4 more points than just doing 1 rocket and then 1 cargo ship. But it turned out to be kind of a curse during teleop because their defense robot knew exactly where Simcoe was going, always to the rocket, because that's all that was left. So here's an example of the maximized points / game pieces versus the more flexible startup for teleop. So this is an example of 2018. OP and Theory are in this match, and I want you to focus on how OP and Theory kind of deal with this. Yeah, we're going to start. So basically the objective is to obviously win the scale in the middle of auto. This thing loads. Okay, so here comes OP. Theory puts on the first cube. OP comes with the second one to get 2 cubes on. And then the third one to get 3 on, because 195 it will, at the end of this, is down 1 cube. But if you notice, Theory actually held back their other cube that they picked up from the pyramid. They could have put it into the switch, which would have gained us more points, but they actually saved it for the scale, so then we can always keep a lead on the scale, because it was harder to score for the opposing alliance to score points on our switch in the first 30 seconds. So having that kind of trade-off of putting you best in the position for success during teleop was definitely worth it, because it also aligned us that OP would go further back and start getting these cubes to put in the scale, and now Theory is in this middle section ready to go to use these cubes to put into the scale, so then the opposing alliance won't come steal our cubes. Compared to if they just put it into the switch, they would be probably back here and behind a couple seconds. And we all know how important even like a couple seconds was that year. Wait. Okay, the 30-second rule. This is basically, I feel like most teams kind of figured out that the 30 seconds is like extremely important, especially using the example of 2018 again, because in 2018, the first 30 seconds could honestly rule the game and win you the match. So in the first 30 seconds, you want to align yourself to have the most effective initial pickup location for game pieces, which is why OP in that example went further back, and then Theory was right there, so we were right on the mark to get the game pieces that we wanted to use up first. And then the second one is initial scoring position. So I think that's a good point for 2019, where we placed our autos in a way so that we were both ready to score on the rocket ships, because the scoring underneath the rocket ships underneath D was obviously way harder than scoring underneath D using the cargo ship. Yeah, so just really considering the first 30 seconds is something that I feel like most team strategists overlook, and it can set you up for complete success for the rest of the game. Okay, so this is 2018 when Dave and Rishi beat us using strategy. And it is because OP and Theory did not take care of their 30-second rule at all. We can play the example and I can explain.
Starting this match in 3, 2, 1. Power up!
Okay,
All right, match number 2. Let's see if the Red Alliance can rebound.
okay,
Blue Alliance.
so
Red
Theory
Alliance
is here
going for
playing
that.
on their first cube. Here's
Even
Dave.
again, almost meeting at the same time.
Yeah, in sync.
Blue
Yeah.
Alliance, Red
Here
Alliance,
comes.
neck and neck at the moment.
So we have our defense here,
Okay, good autonomy.
Theory here, and us there. This huge cluster is what caused us the game and caused us the win of that regional, because we did it all throughout the competition and did not catch on to it till we had our debrief after. Compared to Dave and compared to Dave in 4917, who had this strategy where 4917 would be on this side and Dave would be on this side, so then they can split off and not get entangled with themselves like Theory and OP did. Yeah, that was unfortunate. So, use your 30-second rule.
Alright, so the next thing we're going to talk about is this wasn't in the strategy. So when a strategist playing the match before, Rishi actually brought this up in his coaching seminar, basically that the strategist needs to come up with contingency plans for the coach, so that if anything goes wrong or if it doesn't go according to strategy, you have another plan ready, which happens way more often than you would think. I've been on both sides of being strategist and coach, and having it ready from your strategist is extremely important. So a contingency plan, so you would need different contingency plans for different parts of the game. The first would be after autonomous, so comparing the game pieces of your opponent's score compared to your own. So let's say in 2018 the opponents put 3 cubes on the scale and you had 0, you're not getting the skill back at that point. At that point you might as well go for their switch, protect your switch, use your power-ups in a way where it still allows you to come out with the win. It's unlikely, but it's at least more favorable that way. And then other contingencies could be that game pieces were scored here, so go do this, go do that. Make yourself in a more favorable position for the rest of the game rather than trying to complete that task right of autonomous. The next part would be the middle of the game. So I came up with something which is called the 80-second rule after 2018, because in 2018 we actually, during our strategic breakdown, realized if you're in a match at the 80-second mark, if you're tied or even just slightly above in a match, if you completely left the scale, went to the opponent's switch, took their switch, had your switch, and put your cubes into the power-ups, which was a lot easier than keeping the scale, especially for a team like 1241 that struggled on the higher end, you were bound to win the match, almost guaranteed. It happened at MAC, it happened multiple times. So the 80-second rule is basically that strategist needs to come with a contingency plan, which can be used year in, year out, where it could be 90 seconds, 100 seconds, but 80 seconds is typically the point of the match where you can still change up your strategy in game and still come out with a win.
This is, just to interrupt, this is also the kind of rule that I used when I came up with the Jack in the Bot strategy for IRI. At the 8-second rule, then Jack in the Bot went to go play D. And even if they didn't complete, we had a contingency that even if they didn't complete all the lower level hatches, they would still go play D at the 8-second mark because it is enough time to turn around the game.
Yeah. So 80 seconds is typically a point where, for new strategists and new coaches, use as reference. And then the last part would be endgame. So endgame, there could be different things that happen. So let's say from last year, you have 2 robots on your alliance that can both go on level 3. Let's say one of the robot that was actually supposed to go up on level 3 breaks during the match. Have a contingency plan with your coach where your coach can immediately be like, hey, I'm going on because your robot is broken, and then they get on level 3. Or let's say you're doing a double climb or anything like that, and the timing's not working out, like there's 10 seconds left, you're not gonna get a double climb in 10 seconds. Have that contingency plan that, hey coach, by 20 seconds, if you're not going for the double climb, you're not getting a double climb, just tell them to go on level 2 and you go on level 3. So here is an example of middle of game contingency plan. Sorry, Rishi. So this is Einstein Finals 2, where 1310 was obviously in the finals, so it was 54-6. But the reason 2217 and 3707 were be able to be successful in this match was because they had a switch off. In that switch off, they would sometimes lose 1310 in the middle and each put on a game piece. So something you'll actually notice in this game specifically is you have 1310 playing defense on 217, 3707. They actually dumped the ball because they realized 217 is getting defended hard. They grab a hatch, 217 comes over here, puts on a hatch there, 3707 comes and puts on a hatch right there. Now what's happened is the lower bottom levels of both rockets have hatches. It's a lot easier to put on balls than it is hatches. As soon as they see that, you can see that both teams start going with balls to both rockets. That's 3 points per ball. That's about 12 points you can put in towards the end. 9 to 12 points that they get right now before they do their double climb. That was crucial in order to win this Einstein Finals 2 match.
Rembrandt needs to make their way back.
Okay, how to be annoying effectively. So this is where we will go on our defense spiel. This is more about how to play smart defense for a better strategy rather than why defense is important to strategy. I feel like a lot of Ontario teams understand the power of defense, unlike some American teams, as probably all of you have experienced at Worlds. Okay, so to start off, why defense is important. So defense is important to slow down, obviously, the opponent's alliance in their cycle runs, and then also just to get the cluster out of your section, because they probably will send D to you, and if not, 2 robots being able to have all that room to themselves will be able to drive more efficiently into their optimal routes without having to worry about a 3rd robot in that section.
Okay, so preparing your defensive driver. So as a strategist, you have to let your you have to help your coach out with a few things. So some of the things could be that analyze your opponent's robots mechanically. When I say mechanically, I mean how many motors does the other team have on their drivetrain? What wheels are they using? Are they Omni wheels? If they're Omni wheels, just tell your coach, drive through them, and the coach will let your driver know. But let's say they have pneumatic wheels and they have 6 sims, it doesn't make sense to try to drive through them. So your strategy for how you're going to get around defense and how you will be playing defense depends on your opponents mechanically. So if you know your opponent, let's say you're the defensive robot and your opponent is an offensive robot and they have Omni wheels, you know the way you're going to get them is just take them and drag them across the field. But let's say you know they're a tank, they have 6 sims, the 6 mini sims, they have pneumatic wheels, this and that. What you probably want to do is get in their way rather than try to push them like you typically would. And it's the same thing vice versa. The next point would be that line up your defensive robot with their best line of sight. So what I mean by that is if you're in the most right driver station and you're trying to play defense in the towards the left of the field on the opponent side, it's very difficult to see with the cargo ship in the middle of this year. So ideally, you'd want your defensive robot's line of sight to be clear. So that's where you want to put the defense, because even though it might make more sense to play defense on the robot that's over there, towards the right, if you have a clear line of sight, you're going to be more efficient on playing defense. And then the last thing would be that determine terminology between driver, coach, and strategist, so that when you guys are talking, you can talk on the fly. Let's say you just played semis one, you lost, right? And you got to move on to the next semis match. What do you need to change up? Having different terminology, having the same terminology between driver, coach, and strategist really helps out. Because strategists can be like, hey, coach, instead of going to the far rocket, stay to the close rocket, or hey, defensive robot, instead of playing close to the rocket line, play close to the feeder line. Feeder line being wherever they're getting their game position. So if you're able to communicate this quickly, the coach can actually use that with their drivers now, and then it makes everything a lot more efficient. Strategies, yeah, coming up with the best idea of how to take down the other lines, but it's also about how do you do things most efficiently.
Okay, now I will talk about positional defense. So positional defense is defense that occurs in a specific spot on the field that prevents or slows down any robot from accessing it. So there is a difference. So the next one is man-to-man defense. There is a difference because positional defense is you stay in that one section. So this year, it would be staying on the left side of the cargo ship instead of going back and forth to the right and losing all robots because you're just trying to chase one robot or just playing really bad positional D. So an example that we have is actually from 2017. Positional D was key this year because if you remember, they had the 3 pegs that were available. So you always knew that, you always knew that teams would always come to one of those 3 pegs, and so you would put your D-bot on the position that is the easier access to the robot that's trying to put the gear on. That is really confusing. Let me rephrase that. So if Shahroze is 2056 and there is a peg here, here, and here, you would put the D-bot right here because it would force him to either go through the D-bot or go the long way around to either this peg or this peg. And then obviously you have another robot trying to score as well, so 2056 would have to cooperate with that other robot as well. So it does have its benefits.
You're trying to create a lot of congestion by playing positional D as well.
So during this, you see Cyrus has playing positional D right here. So he first defends this team, and now they are defending this team around one of these. They're basically creating this huge cluster. So then it also makes room over here for our lines until like all these balls are on there. But blocking off this one section is crucial, so then you have to go down the long lines and slow down your cycle times.
One good part about that was because for 670 was playing positional D there, since the gears actually dropped off on the opposite side of the field, 4678 had a floor pickup, so they pick up a gear anytime that no other robot was around on the opposing alliance, and kept it to them and scored it when the other robot went away. So because they were playing that position, they stayed there the whole time and were able to score and defend at the same time.
Same thing in 2018, where you would put the D-bot between the switch and then the wall, and then when a robot wasn't in that position, they would go put a cube in the exchange, which is still valid and towards scoring points.
Okay, so man-to-man defense. This is when the defense